Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Om Shri Medha Dakshinamurti Swamine Namaha Om Sahana Vavato Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So, namaste once again, everyone.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste. So, in the last class, we started discussing the third verse. Verse number 3 as per our list, select list, and verse number 4 as per the original list. Labdva katanchit narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam sruti paradarshanam yastvatma mukyaina yateta mudadhihi sahyatmaha swam vinihanya sadgrahat. So, we are discussing how rare an occurrence it is to attain three things. Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam and Mahapurusha Samsraya, which we saw in the previous sloka. And this is possible. The combination of these three is possible only through Deva Anugraha, the grace of the Lord. And these three are inevitable if one has to cross the ocean of samsara, the bhavasagara, into which we are all born. In fact, some time ago, I was listening to one popular spiritual orator from Tamil Nadu, controversial figure, but he talks very nicely, all stories and all. He makes a very interesting comparison. He says people use ships to cross oceans, isn't it? Therefore, to cross the ocean of samsara, what are the ships that we use? He says, we choose to travel in three ships. The first is, as even we are born, we find ourselves in a ship called relationship. Whether we like it or not, whether they are helpful or not, traveling in this relationship is unavoidable. Then we grow up a little and we find that this traveling by this relationship is not much use. Therefore, we choose another ship. What is that? Friendship. This is the second ship we use to cross the Bhavasagara, the ocean of samsara. And of course, we travel in that for some time, and in time we discover that this is also to be useless. So we board the third ship called partnership. We get married and get a partner. And throughout our life, we are traveling in all these three ships without realizing that these ships cannot take us across the ocean of samsara. That is our ignorance. They cannot. You can travel in those ships happily, but they will not help you cross the ocean of samsara, which is the ultimate human goal. They cannot deliver moksha. Therefore, what is it that you have to do? He says, first you have to switch over to a different ocean. And what is that ocean? It is devotion. So you have to first jump into the ocean, change the ocean to an ocean called devotion. And in that, what ship will help you? The name of the ship is worship. So only worship with devotion has the power, has the ability to deliver us from the life of samsara and take us towards moksha, for which we have to use another ship. What is that? It is called scholarship. That means gain the knowledge of the real self, Atma Vidya. So I had heard this beautiful explanation, because whenever we talk of ocean, we think of ship and crossing the ocean and all, and very beautifully here put it. So I thought I will share it with you all. So now coming back to the sloka on Shankaracharya says, Katanchit, somehow, Narajanma, the human birth, labdva, having gained, having attained. How do you attain the human birth? Because the possibility, as I explained in the last class, the probability is 1 in 84 lakhs, 8.4 million, isn't it? That much number of species are there according to the Shastra, and human species is one of them. So that's a rare combination. So what happens is, the right combination of punya and papa is what gives rise to a human body, which provides an opportunity to seek and gain moksha. So you have to have the right combination of punya and papa. If papa is more, you will get a lower birth. Lower in the sense in gradation, animal birth or bird birth, plant birth, insect birth, worm birth, anything you can get. All are jivas. If the punya is more, you will get a, you will go to, you will get a birth as a devata or some celestial beings and all that. Therefore, human beings in the middle rather. So the right combination of punya and papa, I don't know what the ratio is, don't ask me. But there is a combination, because of which we get a human birth. So, with the right combination of punya papa and with deva anugraha, this person has got a human birth. He or she, I mean, we can put both. Then he says, tatrapi, there too. That is, even after having attained the rare human birth, pumstvam durlabham. Attaining maleness is rare. Now, this word pumstvam has created a bit of controversy in recent times. The Vachyartha of Pums means Puman, a Purusha, a male human being. So literally translated, if you take the Vachyartha, Pumstvam means maleness of a human being. Therefore, here Shankaracharya seems to suggest that a human being has got advantage of being a male, and which is interpreted that male birth is superior and female birth is inferior. This is the basis of controversy. So male is more advantageous, female is less advantageous. Will any female in these days digest it? Maybe 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, they understood what Shankaracharya meant. But today, with the knowledge of Sanskrit, knowledge of our scriptures, knowledge of spirituality being what it is, it is more possible that this will be misunderstood rather than understood in the right perspective. Because today is the age of gender equality and there are many women organizations, who will keep fighting for that. This will be this kind of interpretation, pumstvam and all, very rare. Female will not accept. They'll come up with all sorts of arguments. So if we get into that controversy, there will be no end to the arguments and no purpose will be served. Therefore, how we have to interpret, as I explained in the first class, Vachyartha and Lakshyartha. One is the literal meaning of the word, another is the implied meaning of the word. So we have to take the Lakshyartha of the word pumstvam, which represents exalted qualities like courage, sacrifice, renunciation, etc., which are also rare. And pumstvam does not mean that only a man has got these qualities. There are men physically who are males without these qualities, and there are women with these qualities. So pumstvam, if we take the Lakshyartha, means whether it is male or female, these qualities of courage, sacrifice and renunciation, etc., is very rare amongst the human beings, be it male or female. That is how we have to take a constructive interpretation. Why is that? Because as I keep repeating, spiritual pursuit is a purely internal pursuit. It's a personal pursuit. The physical body has got nothing much to do with it. Of course, the physical body has to be maintained. We can't ignore it. But what is more important is our mind, our intellect, and our sukshma shariram, especially antakaranam. That is very important. They matter more in the inward journey rather than our physical attributes. Therefore, in the Vedantic context, in the spiritual context, maleness or pumstvam should not be taken in the literal sense. We should take it as referring to certain internal qualification, certain internal qualities. Therefore, for our purpose, we will translate pumstvam as certain advantages in internal qualifications, irrespective of the person is a male or a female. And what are those internal qualifications? The first one and the most important intended internal qualification is emotional strength. Freedom from emotional weakness is very, very important. When you have to develop vairagya as a part of sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, you have to create an emotional distance between you and people around you, objects around you, and situations around you. If you are not able to create that distance, you will always be wrecked by emotions which will not allow you to pursue the spiritual path. You can't meditate, you can't concentrate on Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. You can't do anything. In fact, sometimes this emotional upheaval which we experience can even act as a big obstacle even for doing our day-to-day work. Forget spirituality. But it is very important, the spiritual, the emotional overcoming the emotional weakness, emotionally distancing yourself from all these people, objects and situations, very important. So it requires, spiritual pursuit requires emotional strength, emotional independence or emotional courage. Basically, freedom from any kind of emotional attachment. And for the moksha pursuit, which is what the spiritual pursuit is in our Advaita Vedanta Siddhanta is, all our scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita, emphasize on this and declare that raga or emotional attachment can be a very big obstacle to freedom or liberation. Because a person who is emotionally attached will not be able to gain the knowledge. And even if that person gains the knowledge, he will not be able to get the emotional benefit of that knowledge. If that person is overly attached to people and things, especially attachment to family, spouse, children, grandchildren, parents, etc., that can be a very big obstacle to attain or realize the benefit of this knowledge. Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter, Lord Krishna says, Asaktirana Vishwangaha Putradara Grihadhishu. Don't get overly attached to children, spouse, home, etc. Over attachment or emotional slavery will create problems, will create obstacles in the spiritual pursuit. He says the same message conveys in Bhajagovindam also. But that does not mean that one should not have love and affection towards one's family members. But when the love leads to clouding of our Viveka Shakti, clouding of our discriminative powers, that is called attachment. What Arjuna suffered in the first chapter, Bhagavad Gita. My Bhagavad Gita students will know what I am talking about. So there is a difference between love and attachment, which I explained in detail in the Gita classes. We normally confuse the two. Love is not an obstacle. In fact, love promotes spirituality. Love towards everything, equally, samatva bhava towards everything. Love everything in this universe. Attachment, which clouds, attachment arising out of our, inability to think, in a discriminative manner, discriminate between right and wrong, dharma, adharma, that is an obstacle. So as long as we have love which does not cloud dharma, dharma viveka or atma, anatma viveka, that love is safe. The moment it clouds these twofold viveka, it is no more love, it is attachment. And emotional attachment is an obstacle. Therefore, pumstvam needs to be understood as emotional independence. So let us assume this person has got that emotional courage or strength also. So pumstvam also labdham astu. Okay. He has got all narajanmam, then what is that? Narajanmam, mumukshutvam, and also mahapurusha samsraya and pumstvam also labdham astu. All of them he has got. He or she has got. And he says, Shrutipara darshanam api labdhamastu. So let us assume that this human being is born in a culture like ours, which knows the value of moksha. Such a person is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Because a person born in some other culture will not know what moksha or self-knowledge at all, isn't it? This is not talked about in any other culture. They stop at the level of, sin and what is that? Punya. I don't know what they use for punya. Word is. Papa, they use the word sin. Right? And there is a heaven, one has to go there and there will be a God. and it is a he God. They all accept that God is formless. But then when it comes to talking about God, they say it's a person, it's a he, male God is sitting there and he does all these things, send you to heaven or hell or whatever it is. Anyway, let's come back. Shruti Para means the shore of Vedas. Shruti means Veda. Para means the shore, right? In Hindi also they say, no, par, us par, other shore, right? So on the other hand, sorry, the shore is, the shore of Shruti is Shruti Para. And that refers to the ultimate destination of Vedic teaching, which is moksha. Therefore, here the word Shruti Para, we have to take it to mean moksha. And Darshana means he knows. So this person who has got all these 4 rare qualities has understood that moksha is the ultimate destination. So Shrutipara Darshanam means one who knows moksha is the ultimate goal of life from his study of the scriptures. So this person is endowed with all 3 rare qualities: Narajanma, Pumstvam, Shrutipara Darshanam. And of course, along with Narajanma, we discussed about the other 2 also, Mumukshutvam and Mahapurusha Samsraya. He has got all that. It's a unique opportunity he or she has as compared to millions of others who will not have a combination of all these qualities. They may have 1 or 2, but not all qualities together. Such a person is a very rare person. And Shankaracharya says, goes on to say, but despite that, Yahatu Mudadhihi, the one whose buddhi is confused, the one whose intellect is deluded. Why deluded? Because despite having all these advantages, Atma Muktyai na yateta, knowing full well the importance of moksha, he does not dedicate his life for moksha as the primary goal, the ultimate goal. Why? Because he says, I don't have time now, I will do it later. When I retire, I will do it. Keeps on postponing. Why? Because he is totally engrossed in the worldly affairs. He seems to be enjoying what he is having, or at least, if not enjoying, if he is having a lot of problems, he feels that first he has to solve all those problems in order to go for this spiritual path, etc. Shankaracharya puts it very beautifully in his Bhajagovinda. Balastavat krida sakta hai, tarunastavat taruni sakta hai, vriddhastavat chinta sakta hai, parame brahmani kopina sakta hai. Every stage of life, when he is a child, he is busy playing. When he is grown up and become a young man, he is busy in that life which gives enjoyment and things like that. He becomes an old man, a lot of worries and everything is there. Nobody seeks Param Brahma, the moksha. That is the lament of Shankaracharya in Bhajagovinda. Therefore, despite all his advantages, he says, I will do it later. After completing all my duties, I will try. He keeps on postponing. He doesn't prioritize properly. His entire time is dedicated to fulfillment of so many other worldly commitments. He or she doesn't have time for moksha. Whenever I say he, you can add she also, because I want to be gender neutral. Because general, when in English language, whenever you say she in a context, if the context permits, she is also included in that. It need not necessarily be stated separately. But then I just want to make sure that there are no ruffled feathers in this class. So in case I don't use she, you please add she to wherever I'm saying he. Because I said moksha pursuit is open to everyone. There is no gender, in fact, not even age discrimination. You can get onto a spiritual path in when you are 5 years old, like Ramana Maharshi or Adi Shankara and all that, you know. And so this person doesn't have time for moksha, and by the time he discovers that moksha is very important, all his faculties are gone, hearing is gone, eyesight is gone, memory is gone. Shankaracharya says, what a waste of precious human life. Therefore he says, Yaha Atma Muktyai na yateta Saha Mudadhihi. One who doesn't give top priority for liberation and start working for that right from early in life itself, he is foolish. Because the word Mudadhihi is translated both ways as foolish and also confused. You can take it all means the same. Some a confused person only will act in a foolish manner. Therefore, his message is this moksha pursuit is not something to be postponed to later, start early. And in the word Atma Muktyai, the word Atma is used here as a reflexive pronoun. Mukti means moksha, liberation. Therefore, a person has to start early. When the moment he realizes this is important, he has to start. Suppose a person doesn't do or doesn't so dedicate or commit himself to liberation and start working by entering karma yoga very early in life, so that sometime later in the middle of the life he can enter jnana yoga, and before long he can attain moksha. Such a person who knowingly doesn't do all this, understand what is the root, what is the spiritual path when we means, what are the stages of the spiritual path, he has no clue at all. And even having known, he doesn't follow it. Who knowingly doesn't do that is a superlative fool. Because if you don't know it, fine. You can have an excuse. Okay, nobody told me. But you know everything, but you don't follow it. That means what? You are a bigger fool. Right? And what is he doing, such a person? Saha asad grihat. Asat here refers to all materialistic things in the world. Anatma. Sat means Atma, Asat means Anatma. And Anatma is not just things or objects. The people of the world, all relationships, everybody will come under Anatma only, so long as we are identifying them with their body, mind, sense complex. So family members also are Anatma only, because whenever we refer to them, we are referring to them by a name. Our understanding is, oh, this is my relative. No, he is a doctorate. He is this, he is that. All anatmas. So asat means all things and beings other than the atma, the self. And they all come under the definition of anatma. So asat grahat means holding on to them, spending life in the pursuit of these material things and in their maintenance rather. Whole life is spent on what? Yoga and Shema. Yoga is collection, Shema is protecting that. So all objects, people, situations, including pursuit of family, maintenance of family, pursuit of property, maintenance of property, acquisition and maintenance of all kinds of anatma is called asatgraha. They are of such nature that they will keep on expanding. As the family keeps on expanding, your bachelor, get married, get children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, go on expanding. The anatma and the emotional attachment goes on expanding. And they demand our quality time and mind. A huge mind space they demand. So most of the time we are preoccupied with them. So even when we have the time, our mind is not available. That is not free. It is thinking of one anatma or the other. All this, when you want to understand what is asatgraha, all these things you have to remember. So we find ourselves under its spell, under its hold, under its clutches. Within the jaws of anatma, we find ourselves. And because of this, he doesn't pursue moksha. And what is the consequence of this? He says, Saha Atmaha hi swam vinihanti. He says, alas, well, alas word is not using here. But the tone of what he says is that, alas, he is becoming suicidal. He is destroying himself indeed. He, Atmaha, he swam vinihanti. Here also, Atma is used as a reflexive pronoun. So, Atmaha means killer of the self. Ha means killer, suicider. It is not that he is physically killing himself by hanging from a rope or taking poison or jumping before a running train, etc. That is not meant here. He is killing Swam, the real self, the Atma itself is killing as though, as it were. It is a figurative expression because the real self, Atma, we cannot kill because Atma is immortal. So how can we kill Atma? Therefore, it is just to sort of highlight the importance, that Adi Shankara uses this kind of an expression. So here, killing means when we ignore the Atma by not paying attention to its pursuit, we make the Atma as good as absent. When we ignore something, that ignored thing is as good as non-existent, isn't it? It is as though killing, removing it from our lives, you can call it. Therefore, he will not get the benefit of Atma, he will not get the benefit of moksha. Losing the spiritual benefit is some kind of a spiritual suicide. And here he is committing that, he or she is committing that. In short, he is wasting his precious human birth. Saha asatgrahat, that person, by holding on to Atma commitment, is as though committing suicide, as though killing himself by ignoring the real self. So here Shankaracharya is addressing all human beings. Do not pursue dharmartha kama beyond a certain level. They all you should pursue because artha, kama and dharma are purusharthas, human goals. But that should subserve the moksha pursuit. Family life is important, money is important, taking care of them is important, but all the time remind yourself, these are just stepping stones. I should discover my inner freedom. And here he is just giving an indirect warning. And in Bhajagovindam, he doesn't mince the words. He says, Bhajagovindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamate, say Mudhamate, Mudadhi, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati, Dikrim Karane. All this materialistic knowledge Knowledge, yeah, Dikring Karane is again a figurative expression. Dikring Karane, Dikring is a verb in Sanskrit language. Kru Dhatu. Kru Dhatu in Panini Sutra is, application of the grammar rule. It is named as Dikring. Dhatu is Kru. So by learning all these things, and that stands for all kinds of learning, materialistic learning, that is a learning which is not connected with the self. So Adi Shankara says, when mortality is frightening you, fear of old age, disease and death can never be overcome by anything other than Govinda. Govindam bhaja mudamate. You must recall now my first beginning of this class. Migrate from the ocean of samsara to the ocean called devotion and travel in a ship called worship for you to reach the primary and ultimate goal in your life. Never waste your precious time. And that is the indirect message given by Adi Shankara. Okay. Excuse me. Now we'll go to next verse number 4, which is verse number 6 as per the original text. Pathantu shastrani yajantu devan kurvantu karmani bhajantu devatah atmaikya bodena vina vimukti na siddhyati brahma shatantarepi. I thought from now onwards I will give the Anvaya because some students are there, Sanskrit students, they may be interested, so they can make a note. Shastrani pathantu, devan yajantu, karmani kurvantu, devataha bhajantu, atmaika bodena vina brahma shatantare api vimuktihi na siddhyati. Word meaning, Shastrani, the scriptures. Pathantu, let them study. Devan, the devas. Yajantu, let them propitiate through Vedic rituals. Karmani, dharmic activities. Kurvantu, let them do. Devataha, the gods. Bhajantu, let them worship. Let them, bhajantu can also be taken and meditate upon. Atmaikya bodhena vina. Without the knowledge of the oneness of the self with Ishvara, Brahma Shatantare api, even after the period of rule of hundreds of Brahmajis, Vimuktihi, moksha or freedom, na siddhyati, is not accomplished. So what is saying? Let the people study the scriptures, let them propitiate the devas through Vedic rituals, let them do dharmic activities, let them worship the gods without knowledge of the oneness of the self with Ishvara, without understanding what Tattvamasi and Aham Brahmasmi Mahavakyas are implying. Even after a period of a rule of hundreds of Brahmajis, moksha cannot be accomplished. This is the message of this sloka. So, after talking about the human, rarities of the human birth and other kinds of rare combinations, Shankaracharya goes into the next topic in the following 3 verses. All are very important topics rather. Moksha, he says, he wants to emphasize and highlight that moksha is possible only through one method, and that is gaining knowledge of the real self. And in this verse, Shankaracharya seals the debate on the contention that there are many paths to moksha. Because there is a general misconception that there are four paths to moksha. Bhakti yoga, path of devotion; karma yoga, path of selfless service; raja yoga, path of meditation; and jnana yoga, path of knowledge. Very popular amongst a lot of people. Even in my classes in Bhagavad Gita and all, students keep asking questions on this. Four paths of salvation. The tragedy is that even many acharyas actually, they teach that there are four paths, and they have come up with their own arguments from that. But this four path destination or as moksha, this theory has got no valid scriptural support. And it has arisen mainly due to the poor understanding of what is said in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. People argue, see, individuals are many, different kinds of individuals, their tastes are different, their temperaments are different. And since God treats everybody as equal, He has made four paths to moksha. Depending upon your temperament, you can choose whatever you want. For someone, worship is good enough. For some others, asana, pranayama, etc. For somebody else, something else. So there are so many methods. So why should we not follow any one of them? Is the question. It's true that we have choices for dharmic living, leading a life as ordained by the scriptures. There are choices when we talk about karma kanda of the Veda. So among those methods, for pursuit of dharma, artha, kama, many choices are available. These various means are things to be done, so you have a choice there. But moksha, for moksha, there is no choice, because moksha means what? Liberation or freedom from the perils and miseries of samsara. And also their continuity, liberation from their continuity in the next and future births. Basically means put an end to the cycle of punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Why scriptures say there is only one path to moksha? We have to understand that very carefully. First of all, we have to understand what is moksha. As I just now said, moksha is freedom or liberation from the perils and miseries of samsara, and also putting an end to this rebirth. Because once you have a rebirth, you are going to carry forward all these miseries and sorrows and grief, etc. If it is going to be a human birth. In other births, it is still worse. Suppose you are born as a plant, a tree. It grows into a tree. You know the misery? You have to stand in sun, and come what, sun or rain, you cannot run away. You can't take protection. All that you produce as fruits or whatever it is, or flowers, these human beings and other people take away, birds eat and all that. You can't consume anything that you produce. You can be cut down by anything, by an animal attacking you, by a human being cutting you. You can't do anything about it. What kind of a misery it is? There are no courts, no laws, nothing. You can't go and appeal anywhere. You are a tree. So first we have to understand what moksha means. If we mean by moksha means going to Vaikuntha or Kailasa or Swarga, etc., we are not in that in that understanding. For us, very clear, what does Shastra, Vedas, they define as moksha, that is as get liberation or freedom. So according to the scriptures, when we talk of liberation of freedom from what? From the problem of bondage or problem of samsara, because of which the consequent sufferings and grief arises. And Shastra says, this problem of your suffering is because of your ignorance of your true nature, ignorance of the true nature of the self. It is a problem which manifests because of our strong identification with the body, mind, sense complex. And body, mind, sense complex by nature is limited, mortal, which constantly suffers from a sense of inadequacy. Whereas Atma is limitless, immortal, Purna, always fullness, contented, which is your real nature, which unfortunately, because of your ignorance, you don't know. So the whole pursuit, spiritual pursuit, is knowing the real nature of the Atma, the self. So the root of the problem is in ignorance of our true self, and ignorance cannot be wished away except through knowledge, isn't it? Ignorance will not go away by devotion. Ignorance cannot be removed by meditation or yogasanas. Even dharmic activities cannot remove ignorance. Suppose you feed 10,000 people, you do annadana, will it remove your ignorance? It will not. It will give you punya, all right. And that punya may be a cause for your next birth also. That's a different thing. Therefore, if we have to get rid of the ignorance, there is only one way, and that is to gain knowledge. It is just like, darkness cannot be wished away by sweeping it or by blowing it. It can be removed only with light. And as we discussed in the inaugural class, the Prasthanatrayam, consisting of Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra, only are considered as valid means of knowledge for the moksha pursuit from the Advaita Siddhanta standpoint. So therefore, then we have to gain the knowledge which is there in the Prasthanatrayam for us to attain that liberation, attain that freedom. And there is another reason for this confusion relating to many paths. And as I said, that lies in the very understanding of what is meant by moksha. For most people whose knowledge does not go beyond the Puranic literature, moksha means for them going to Vaikuntha, Kailasa, Swarga, etc. And that's very easy because you don't need to do anything. You have to do some dharmic activity, some earn punya. And then after death, you will go to moksha. No guarantee. Nobody has got that kind of a moksha, gone to Vaikuntha, Kailasa, enjoyed there, come back and told us, oh, I went and, it was very nice. We have not come across any such person. Whereas by gaining knowledge, we have got a lot of Mahatmas who have gained moksha while living. Therefore, the Puranic scriptures talk about moksha in this sense, but that is not the real moksha. If one earns a lot of punyam, one may be able to travel to Vaikuntha, Kailasa, Swarga, etc. after death. But that's not the end of the story. I call it pseudo moksha. This type of pseudo moksha will not deliver freedom from the cycle of births and deaths. Now, why do I say that? Lord Krishna himself talks about this type of moksha in the 9th chapter of the Gita and says, Te tam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam Chine punye martyalokam vishanti. Therefore, this pseudo moksha does not deliver you from the cycle of births and deaths. And therefore, the real moksha can be realized only through jnanam, knowledge of the real nature of this self. The ignorance of this self, which is the seed for all miseries and sufferings in life, can be removed only through knowledge of the self and not by any other means. And therefore, Shankaracharya gives an important message in this sloka. Moksha does not have many roads. There is only one road, and that is spiritual knowledge, the knowledge of the self. Atma Vidya alone can remove self-ignorance and self-misconception and lead to moksha, liberation from miseries, sufferings, grief in this life itself, and also liberate one from the cycle of repeated births and deaths. That is what is moksha, which Shankaracharya wants to emphasize through this sloka. And therefore he says, Patantu Shastrani, a spiritual seeker may study different type of shastram for many years. Yajantu Devan, another person may do varieties of yajnas, worshipping different type of deities through varieties of Vedic rituals. Similarly, Kurvantu Karmani, one may not perform Vedic rituals, but may do puja to Lord Vishnu, Shiva and all that, or engage oneself in lot of dharmic activities, reaching out karmas. And there may be some others who do varieties of karma like Laukika karma, Shrauta karma, Smarta karma, other than the yajna, yaga. It could be even mundane, worldly activities. Or bhajantu devata hai. Some other people may practice varieties of upasana. Upasana means meditation. Bhajantu means upasanam kurvantu. All these people can do. I am not meaning to suggest that you should not do it. In fact, you should do it. But don't do it with the idea that these are all paths, different paths which lead to moksha. That is not the case. So people, as I said, varieties of meditation itself is a manasam karma. It's a karma rather, meditation, right? Mental activity. So people do all of them. But while doing all that, and if you have an understanding of what is the fundamental problem, what is the root cause of all these things, which is ignorance of the self, one should keep on questioning oneself whether am I going in the right direction of self-knowledge? Because I have understood that self-knowledge alone can remove fundamental ignorance. So in and through all these activities, they should keep asking themselves, am I getting clear self-knowledge? This must be the question throughout while performing any of these sadhanas. And here Shankaracharya says, if self-knowledge doesn't take place, then the sadhana has not fructified. Because all these sadhanas are sadhanas which come under the definition of karma yoga. And karma yoga, I'll talk about that later, leads to chitta shuddhi. And chitta shuddhi alone is the platform on which the knowledge sits, the self-knowledge sits. So if you have done, am I making progress in gaining self-knowledge? If the answer is no, continue doing these sadhanas. That's the idea. And he wants to emphasize Atmaikya Bodhena Vina. If the sadhanas do not culminate in Atma Aikya Bodha, they are not the means to moksha. The word Aikya sometimes is used when two things are brought together, also is Aikyam. But Aikya really means, it's a Tadita Shabda in the Sanskrit language. Aikya means Ekasya Bhavaha, oneness. So understanding that there is only one self, there is only one Atma, which And at the cosmic level, we call it Brahman. At the individual level, we call it Atma. In fact, there is no difference between Brahman and Atma. They are one and the same. So between Jiva and Jiva, there is no difference. Between Jiva and Jagat, there is no difference. Between the Jiva and Ishvara, there is no difference. Knowledge of this oneness or non-difference is Ekatvam, Advitiyatvam, and that is called Atmaikya Bodha. Therefore, the reality of the cosmos is only one Atma, which pervades everything, oneness of Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, and this is what is conveyed through the Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma, etc. So many hundreds of Mahavakyas are there in the Shastras, in the Upanishads. This is the essence of Advaitam or non-dual philosophy. Which means everything else in the creation, in short, the entire creation is only an appearance of that one Atma only, isn't it? There is no plurality at all which we perceive. But that one Atma appears as everything, like a magic show. The magician makes everything appear as if they exist, whereas nothing exists. So whether it is space, air, fire, water, earth, mountain, river, body, mind, all of them are only appearances or manifestations of that one absolute reality called Atma. And that Atma is my real nature. That means, in fact, I am that absolute reality. And I alone appear in the form of this pluralistic universe. And this is the message of the Upanishad that I should understand and assimilate, and I should be convinced about that. So spiritual path is what? The spiritual path leading to moksha is I should change the way I look at myself entirely, or I should entirely change the way I look at myself. Now I look at myself as an insignificant individual in the universe. I'm a very small fry. Instead, I should understand I am the only significant reality, and I, the reality, alone appear as all these things in the universe. This truth I must assimilate, and that is what is called Atmaikya Bodha by Adi Shankara. And this Atmaika Bodha vina vimuktihi na siddhyati. As long as this knowledge has not taken place in me, liberation is never possible at all, even if one practices all the sadhanas for many, many years. Liberation won't come as long as this knowledge has not taken place. On the other hand, if a person gets this knowledge within a short period, then that person will get liberated. Therefore, the duration of the sadhana is not important, but gaining this knowledge is what is important. And therefore he says, Brahma Shatantare api. You may just keep the time. Brahma Shatantare, tenure of 100 Brahmajis. Even after the tenure of 100 Brahmajis, moksha will not be accomplished through all these sadhanas. Brahmaji's tenure extends from the beginning of the creation till its dissolution. That's one kalpa, we call it, in terms of time. This itself is a very long time. When the new creation begins, Brahmaji gets replaced. Therefore, he says here, even if one keeps doing these activities for the tenure of 100 Brahmajis, still one cannot accomplish moksha without the knowledge of oneness of the self with Brahman. Therefore, Brahma shata antare api vimukti na siddhyati. The idea that is conveyed is the duration of the sadhana doesn't automatically guarantee moksha or vimukti. Mukti is not possible if self-knowledge is not gained. Then a person may ask, does that mean that one should give up all these sadhanas and go straight for self-knowledge? The answer is yes and no. Yes, if you have gained sufficient adhikaritvam. I talked about adhikaritvam in the first inaugural talk. I will talk about it again after a few slokas. So if you have gained sufficient adhikaritvam in this life or in the previous life, by performing all these sadhanas, then you can straight away go for self-knowledge. If not, no. All these sadhanas, if performed with the karma yoga attitude, will result in chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind, which will prepare the mind and make one an adhikari for self-knowledge. We'll stop here and I'll take the next sloka in the next class. Okay. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Namaskaram,
Thank you all very much. Namaskaram.
Thank you, Guruji. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Guruji.
Namaskaram.
ధన్యవాదాలు మహోదయ. హరి ఓం.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hari Om. Thank you. Yes, question answer.
ధన్యవాదాలు.
Dhanyawad.
so much, Ji.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Anything you said, Narayanji? So
No, thank you very much, Guruji.
let
Thank
us
you
start
very
with Hariji. Then I will come to Girish.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Guruji, can you explain one more time this Atmaikya Bhava? Is it
Atmaika Bodha hai.
Bodha? I'm sorry. Is
Aikya means oneness.
it the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam?
Yes.
Is it the same?
It's the same. Aikyam does not here mean they join together. Because that is another misconception which is there.
Yeah.
That
But
is the
Jivatma-
misconception in other, there are some other darshana. They say you go to Vaikuntha, become one with Vishnu and all that kind of. That is not here. Aikyam means understanding the oneness. That there is no difference between Jiva and Ishvara, between Atma and Paramatma. Understanding through gaining that knowledge that there is no difference at all. You don't need to travel anywhere to become one and all that. You are already one. Problem is you don't know that. So the remove the ignorance through knowledge, automatically you get this Atmaika Bodha, knowledge of oneness of Atma with Paramatma.
It is Advaitam.
Advaita.
Okay.
Shankaracharya will not talk about anything else. So
Okay.
that's it. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Giriji.
So, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
I just want to know, so do we define God as Brahman? Or it is a separate identity?
Brahma, God is a form, the basis of what we define. But first of all, we have to see what do you mean by God?
No, now we consider it is a separate entity. Who is a supreme power?
Correct. But what is the supreme? Are we referring to Vishnu, Shiva, all that, or are we referring to a formless
Consciousness.
entity, which is a supreme power, which is the adhishtanam of this entire universe, on which this entire universe is resting? If we are understanding that, then we can say God is Brahman.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay.
Because when we use words, we have to be very clear in what sense we are using it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
since we are in this path and
Yeah.
trying to understand
You can-
Brahma Jnanam or Atma Jnanam, I think God can be defined as Brahman. That's what
Yes.
I.
Yes.
Okay.
God is Brahman, because what is ultimately Brahman? Sat Chit Ananda.
Hmm.
So that Satchidananda is what you can call God, you can call Brahman, you can call Atma. All
Bhagavan,
Function-
Ishwaran, whatever it is.
sorry,
Bhagavan, Ishwara.
Bhagavan, Ishvara, everything. When we talk of Ishvara, what we do is we introduce the Maya element in that, because when we say Ishvara, it has a form. That is our orientation, right?
Correct.
So when the form is introduced, name and form is introduced, then we introduce a Maya element to Brahman, which is the material cause for the universe. Whether you call it Ishvara, whether you call a table, whether you call laptop, whether you call a tree, all these are all materials, right? Without that, the world cannot be created. So for any creation, we require two things, material as well as the skill. So Ishvara, when we talk, we are talking about both combination of Maya and Brahman. Even though this is only in our understanding, there is no difference between Maya and Brahman. In fact, Maya and Brahman are one and the same only as per the scriptures. It's only different functions they perform in the creation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to worship, actually, which we were talking about devotion and the worship to attain moksha, actually, so what do we mean by that worship then?
Worship means, at the basic level, recognizing that there are powers, cosmic powers in the universe.
Okay.
And that our very own existence, what we are today, is because of the blessing of so many powers. And it is that, in fact, the cosmic powers, countless powers. In fact, our Shastras give some number as 33 crore and all that. But what it basically means, they are countless, right? We don't even know. We have only discovered, scientists have discovered a few powers, right?
Correct.
That is the only powers we know. But there are so many. And in fact, science is continuously discovering so many powers as the scientific progress and more research is taking place. Recently, I was reading one article. Somewhere in some very distance, they have discovered an Earth-like galaxy. I mean, a galaxy like our galaxy. And they are projecting that there may be life in that and things like that and all. And they have discovered some phenomenon where two stars are, moving around in an elliptical object and all that. Many of these discoveries challenge our understanding of what science is today. So that discovery goes on. So these countless powers are there. What we have to do by worship, what we are saying is, we have to be respectful, thankful to all those powers, because we exist because of those powers. That is what is worship. And that is the path. The more and more we become one with the nature, one with the cosmos, we understand that this is what the whole, the picture is. Then all our ahankara, that I am separate, that will get diluted more and more and more. And dilution of ahankara itself will lead to chitta shuddhi. Because all the chitta ashuddhi is all emanating from this ahankara. Mamakara, ahankara, kartritvam, bhoktritvam, all these are responsible for all the impurities like kama, krodha, lobha, moha, madam, acharya. So the more and more you are identifying yourself, disidentifying yourself with the body-mind complex and identifying yourself with the cosmic powers, then your ahankara gets diluted, and that is the path. That's why worship, in fact, I talked about bhakti yoga being a path. In fact, bhakti yoga there is nothing called bhakti yoga. There is only called bhakti. And bhakti is common for everything, right from the birth to death. in and through all our activities, bhakti, reverence, respect, gratitude is important. So even if you are a jnani, even if you have a realized soul, bhakti is important. Krishna talks in Bhagavad Gita, 4 types of bhaktas he defines. And he just says, jnani bhakti is very dear to me. In Bhagavad Gita, he says. So bhakti is not a separate path. Bhakti is common to all, all sadhanas. And bhakti basically, essentially is nothing but a karma yoga attitude. That's all. So all these things, when we understand in the spiritual path, these are all the elements which will have to come together when we are journeying, in this spiritual path.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Hari Om. Any other question? Doubt?
Hari Om, Guruji. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Namaskar.
Hari Om.
Thank you.
See
Namaskar.
you
Hari
next
Om.
Sunday. Thank you.
Yes.